Hello everyone, welcome. We are live, SharePoint Power Hour. This is a show that we do every Wednesday at 11 Central, and we are sponsored by Rackspace. We all work at Rackspace Hosting. We're in the SharePoint Services department there, and Power Hour is just a free show that we do every week. The idea behind it is mostly out-of-the-box business solutions, things that you can do in SharePoint and Office 365 without having to, be a programmer, without having to necessarily do anything nitty-gritty like server admin stuff, but it's all kinds of other topics that fall in between. So this is I think our 61st episode that we've run the gamut so far of many topics, like we'll do technical demos, like just some little obscure feature that you never tried in SharePoint, and we have discussions about user adoption. We have just information about cool things you can do using the search functionality, workflows, BI, just everything. So I am Laura Rogers, and I'm the Merit Manager of SharePoint Consultants, and I've been using SharePoint for about 10 years, and I love it. And again, this all applies to SharePoint and Office 365 as well. So before I get started with my demo today, it's my turn today, we're going to go ahead and go around the room, and we actually have a guest with us as well. So is actually someone that I've been working with on some business processes that we've automated in his real-world production environment. And so the thing that I'm going to show you today is, something that we've actually made use of in the real world, so we can talk about kind of the pros and cons and things that we've come across using this method. And before I get into what I'm going to demo, I'll let everybody introduce themselves. So Corey, you're our guest. I'll let you go first, and then Kevin, then Ryan, then Joelle.
Okay. My name is Corey Emmons. I'm a SharePoint developer at Pico Palette. We use this task data list concept in a couple of our systems here in SharePoint 2010, and I've been a SharePoint developer now for, I think that's all I got.
All right, Kevin.
There we go. Hi, I'm Kevin Hughes, SharePoint architect. I'm here at Rackspace, based out of Kansas City. I've been in IT for a few decades, working with SharePoint exclusively since 2007, and I come up with all kinds of crazy ideas, so maybe I'll add this one to my mix. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I am Ryan Keller. I am the branding guy on the SharePoint team here at Rackspace. So if you need to make SharePoint look less like SharePoint, that's kind of what I do. I am based out of Colorado, and Kevin and I have also been working with SharePoint since 2007. That's me.
Joelle.
I am Joelle Farley. I am also a consultant with Rackspace, and I have worked with SharePoint since 2007, and I do work a lot with the out-of-the-box features and workflows, as well as planning and design and governance. I'm looking forward to seeing more about the HR onboarding.
Nice. All right. So as we're going, if you're watching live on YouTube, it's streaming. We do have this as actually we use Google Hangouts for this. So if you're watching live on YouTube, it does give you a link right on the video to jump over to the Google Hangout version. And what you're going to get when you go to the Google Hangout version is the ability to do use the little Q&A panel. So it's going to have a couple, like by default, when you go over there, it's going to have a little panel on the right that's this thing called Showcase, where it just shows like links that we might be sharing, but you're going to see like a little grid with some squares towards the top right, and that lets you flip between the Q&A and the Showcase. So you all feel free to try that out and flip over to the Q&A, and I'd love for you to ask questions as we go, make this interactive, because that's the whole point of having it be a live show. So just to test it out, I want everybody to go jump over to the Q&A and just act like you're going to ask a question and just say hey. And I know that there are 12 of you out there, so I'd love for you to try it out and just say hello and let us know that you figured that out. So I'm going to go ahead. So the demo I'm going to do today is, so we did this HR onboarding demo, and it was 6 power hours. So on our YouTube channel, it's called SharePoint RIX is the name of our YouTube channel. On our YouTube channel, when you look at the playlist, it actually has a playlist in there called HR onboarding, and it's got all 6 of the power hours that I did having to do with that solution so far. So what I did was I built out, because it's just a very common thing that people want to be able to do, a business process that they like to be able to automate. This 7th one, hey, thanks for putting the information in the Q&A. Hey, Carlos, good to see you again. This 7th one is going to be taking it a step further. And hey, Lori, what we're doing is in the workflow so far, whenever we've created tasks to assign to people, we have directly created the tasks right there in the workflow with all the information about the task just from the create list item action in the workflow. Well, this concept comes from the need to, which came up in the real world a few times, right, Corey, where the business will come to you like a month after you rolled out the solution and they'll just say, hey, can you just change the name of that task, or change the time that it's due in, or something like that, right? That happens
all the time.
Yes. So what we did was, instead of having to go actually edit the workflow and having to edit something that's already in production and already functioning, and instead of having to edit the workflow and having to publish that and make changes directly in the workflow for little stuff like that having to do with the tasks, is we created a whole separate list called task data. And what the workflow does is it just references the list each time it's creating a task. That way you can give those certain power users, or whoever they are, the people that need to be able to edit task information, you can give them the ability to edit that list, but not have to go edit the workflow. Does that make sense? So, was that kind of the main? Yeah, that was the main gist of it. So there are actually a couple different ways that have implemented this before. So the first way is to use a task data list and to reference that information about the task as you're creating the task. But there's another method that I've actually seen Jennifer Mason use a couple of times in her solutions, is that you're not even putting the data in the task itself when you're creating it. You can just have the task data list and have that task data displayed just on the task form, so that they can see all that extra information about the task without it actually having to all exist inside of the task itself. So I'll go over both of those different ways to be able to do this. Stacy says, can you get rid of the thumbs up and thumbs down thing? I think that's an app that we can turn off. I'll keep that in mind, and I'll see if I can turn that off next time we do this. I think I have to go to a different interface to do that, Stacy. So thanks for your feedback, though. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you just a quick overview of what we've done so far. And not the whole solution that we've done so far, but kind of what the workflow is, just to kind of refresh your memory if you've seen these before, and then we'll dive right into this whole task data concept. All right, so let me go ahead, and I'm just going to jump to a certain part in my workflow, in my PowerPoint, and I'm going to share my screen. So let's see. And you guys that are in here, can you just let me know if somebody asks a question? Screen 1, there we go. Okay. Okay, you can see my PowerPoint now, right? Hopefully. Okay, so this is the overview of what the HR solution is, the HR onboarding process. Kind of went on about when I first started creating was that when you start getting into these more complex processes with multiple branches and things, the built-in task process designer just doesn't cut it, because it's just got too many limitations, and it just causes more problems than it's worth. So this process I use just the create list item for creating all the tasks. But here's the process. So a new hire form gets filled out. The hiring manager has to approve that. Then once that person approves it, it goes to 3 parallel tasks. You've got HR sending the welcome packet, IT creating that person's user account, and then the phone being set up for that person for their desk. And of course, in the real world, you might have other systems that are getting created, like creating PeopleSoft, creating Salesforce accounts, all these different things. And then I wanted to throw in just a condition in here to show you how that would work. So I have an additional task that exists only if the person is in the IT department. So if the person's department equals IT, then they have a special task that the IT security department has to do. And then the next step is HR has to approve it, and then the employee gets to go to orientation, and then the employee marks, that they completed orientation. So that's the gist of what we're doing. And then, like, some of these with the outcomes, some of these are approvals, like the manager approval, but then some of them are just people marking that they completed something. And then, of course, HR's approval. So you've got sort of, various outcomes in here. And now this is where I'm just going to kind of quickly breeze through this. This is where I talked about, like, all the kind of different out-of-the-box ways that you can do approvals, and then the fact that this one is a more complex process, so we're not using any of these out-of-the-box methods of doing this this whole process. All right, so we're going to talk about what happens in the real world. Skipping through some of this because I know I already did it. We already talked about the new hire process. Okay, here, that's some of the workflow stuff. I'm going to jump into the workflow in a second, but I just wanted to show you this one quick thing right here. All right, so the task data options. So what we did was number 1. So in our workflow, we have the create list item action, and we're just saying set assigned to this value, set the task name to this value, and we're just typing them in directly in the workflow to say what all the values of the task need to be. The description, the task name, like how long it needs to be due in, all that type of information. And then the second method, it's a completely different method, is to create a separate list and call it the task data list, and then you reference it in the workflow. So each, of course, just like every kind of list in SharePoint, each item has a unique ID. So we're actually going to use that unique ID in the workflow to be able to reference, like, which task we want to point to and get information from it. So that way the task name, the task description, even task email information, how long it's due, and all that information can be changed at any point in the task data list. And then when a task gets created from the workflow, it's looking up to that live information in the task data list as to what those values are right then. So that way, again, they only have to edit the task data list. All right, and then the third method that I mentioned was creating a task data list, but then not even necessarily putting the values in the fields of the task, but just displaying it as a web part when someone opens a task to look at it. So those are the things that those last 2 ones are going to be the ones that I demo today. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is my VM here, and I'll go ahead and pull up the site. All right, so here's my little test site, and here is where I did some of this to be able to demo real quick just kind of what it would look like with this second method of pointing to an existing task data item. So here's the task data list. I didn't fill out every single task because there are really more like 6 or 7 in our process. I just filled out a few just for you to get the idea. But I have just a custom list, and I have a task name. I have how many hours it's due in. some of you might, your process might just require to know how many days, but some people like to have, like, this is due in 1 hour, this is due in 24 hours, or whatever. And then I put the description here, and then email body is something that we did, Corey, right, that we don't necessarily use that for everyone, but sometimes you're sending the email from the task list and not necessarily from this main workflow, so it just kind of depends. But if you put the email body in a single location and let them reference it, then you don't have to go edit the workflow.
Right. It just gives you extra resources to customize the emails you're sending for these tasks.
Yeah. So how many times would you say that you've gotten requests, like people having to change the test data information, where you were able to simply just go in here and do it and not have to go edit the workflow?
It's usually about every couple of months, but
oh, wow.
With the way we set up our workflows, republishing the workflows in our onboarding system is a major pain in the butt. So any avoidance of republishing workflows is a good thing.
Yeah. Cool. So I created the task data list, and then what I did was I filled it all in, and then additionally I went to the task list and created a new lookup field in here, so that when I generate those new tasks from the workflow, I can also point to, so I called it process step. I can also point to what task data name that comes from. Because, think about it this way, whenever you're looking at a big long list of tasks, what we've done is we've got, like, the task name just says, like, approve new hire, : and it's got the name of the new hire in it, and then it's got who it's assigned to and stuff like that. But when you're looking at a big long task list like this, it's got information about what the task is, like set up new phone, approve new hire. It's got that information sort of buried in the title of the task. So having the information as a separate column, just saying what the name of that step is, gives you more of the ability for reporting purposes, to be able to sort and filter and do views on this list of tasks to see, and you can group it by what step it's at and things like that, and that it just gives you more reporting ways to go about that. Because that's another thing we came across, right, Corey, is that we built this nice pretty system, and then people would say, like, well, I want to see all the tasks that are assigned to somebody in this department, or I want to see all the tasks that are at this step, and it was like, ugh, it extract it. Yeah. We're like, well, if we would have known that that was a necessity, we would have planned that in at the very beginning. So that's what I did, is I created a lookup field called process step, and then I even added department, so that, think about it, when a task gets assigned, like for HR to send the welcome packet or for HR to do the approval, there is an associated department like human resources, and whenever they're needing to create the user account and, like, set up the phone, maybe that's the IT department. So that way, when we're looking through this big long list of tasks, we're going to have the ability to quickly do a view saying, show me everything that, of course I don't have any in here yet, show me everything that's overdue that's assigned to the IT department, or, and that kind of thing. So you don't have to depend on just the assigned to field. If it's assigned to, it could be assigned to an individual or something like that.
Another field for the task data list that can come in handy is a task order field.
Oh.
To keep it so that you can keep it organized with what tasks go in what order for, organization and possibly reporting later if you need it.
Oh, right. So would that be like
going in
task 1, this is task 2, this is task 3?
Correct.
Process?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In this case, I'm just using the ID because I'm just creating them in order, but that's definitely something that would help if you have like 40 of them like we have in one of our task data lists.
Yep. And you add some later, and they're in the middle,
yeah.
And ID doesn't always work.
Yeah, that's very true. Lots of good considerations. Does anybody have questions so far? Do y'all see anything in the Q&A thing? All right. Just let me know, because I can't see that panel from where I am. All right, I'm going to go ahead and run one real quick on this. I have I have this onboarding site, which is where I do things before I demo them for you, and then the onboarding demo, which is where I build them out live in front of you. So this is the onboarding, the first one that I already put one of these in place. So I'll go ahead and show you the workflow, and then I'm going to go actually create a blank, because I don't want you guys to get overwhelmed with kind of all the stuff that's already in the workflow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a blank one that's going to have nothing else in it, so you'll be able to see kind of like pure and simple what exactly that I'm doing. All right, so here's the new hire, add, or edit in my onboarding sites. All right, so I've only done it for one stage so far. So what I did was, remember over in the task data list, the manager approval item was item 1. So and how do I know that? So that's very good question, Laura. How do I know that? So in my view, I can go put the ID field, so I'll know which ID that I'm working with. And again, that's very helpful, especially when you have a lot of them. So there we go. So that's how I can see, and every single list in SharePoint has an ID field. So that's how I can see which one I need to point to. So the first one, manager approval, is ID 1. So this is the important part. Before I do anything with creating this task or anything, I create a variable called task data ID as an integer variable. So create that ahead of time, and then I say for manager approval, that's 1. So I say set the variable task data ID to 1. And then that way, when I'm calculating out my due date, I can say add these many hours to the modified, basically now. So here's how it works. It's looking up the due hours field over in the task data. I'm going to do another one of these just so you can see kind of how I got here, but where the ID is equal to the task data ID of 1. And then when I create the list item, I'm doing the same concept. I'm going in and saying the task name is going to be called the task name from the task data list where the ID is equal to 1, basically. And then I do the same thing with the description. I get that from the task data list. And then I added a new field in here called process step. And that's where I just put, that's to populate that lookup field over in the task list, just to point to which task data item that task is related to. All right, so I'm going to do, so I did this one for manager approval, and I'll go add a second one and then run it, and then I'm going to go over to kind of do it from scratch so you guys can see this better. All right, so the next step is 3 parallel tasks. So in this situation, I did this calculation only once when I added 2 days to, whenever the last task was completed to get my new due date. If these tasks all had different times that they were due, though, that wouldn't really be applicable, because this one I was just assuming that they're all due in 2 days. So what I'm going to do is, again, the first thing you have to do is you have to say set the workflow variable to set the task data ID to number 2, which was send welcome packet. Okay, and then another thing we use in here a lot, right, Corey, is the little comment thing. So comment, and it's so funny because comment was always a mystery to me for a while. I couldn't figure out what the purpose of it was, right? Because we were using logging a lot, right?
Yeah, it's basically logging. It's like when you're writing code and you put comments in, just so you know what step in the process you're on.
Yeah, so instead of having to log something to the workflow history list to see kind of just some basic information, just a note for yourself, this is just where I'm commenting as to which task I'm creating right now. So this is the setup user account task. Did I create that one yet? Create user account. So create account is 3. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So that's what's going to help me. So this is oh, sorry, my keyboard's like really loud. create user account task. So again, the comment is just a personal note for myself. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this down because I'm going to do this individually for each task so that in case they have different due dates. All right, so I need to set, this is the create user account task, set the task data ID, and then I can say, I'm not doing days, remember, because it was due in how many hours. So I'm going to say add how many hours to basically now. Okay, so that's where I have to go do that lookup. So that's my task data list, and that's called due hours. So I need the task data due hours where the ID of the task data item equals that task data ID. Does that make sense? So it's going to find row 3 in there, and it's going to get the due hours for me and put it in there. And that same concept is what I use in here. So task name, instead of just having these words, you know, again, in case they change what the task name is, instead of having it say set up user account here, I can do go to task data and go to my task name, and where the item is basically the ID of the item is my task data ID. So if you understand this one little part right here, how I'm getting that one row, then that's huge. That's the main thing you need to understand here, and that's pretty complicated. So I'm going to say go get the task name here, where basically the row is equal to, and I give it a number. So this one is create user account, and I give it a number. Okay, so that's how that concept's really important to understand. And then let's see what else. Description, that was another one that I had in there. So test data description ID is equal to test data ID. Same exact thing that I'm doing for all those. Like, you know, you could have other ones that you pull from the task data list. Those are the main ones that pretty much people needed to change, and so that's what we used. But if you have other concepts, you can put them in there. So it creates the item in tasks, just using that information instead of me typing it in the workflow. All right, now one other thing I need to remember to consider was, if you guys might remember, or I can refresh your memory, that I had a whole separate workflow called, ooh, yuck. Have y'all ever seen this happen? It's called task completion, but basically I've seen this happen before in 2013 workflows. Have y'all seen? Joelle, you saw this happen the other day, didn't you? No? Yeah? Are you there?
She might be MIA.
She left, yeah. I've seen this happen. The only way around this is, of course, this is just the other test site that doesn't really matter what's in there right now, but it's the workflow still functions, but it just is completely broken, like you can't get into it. I've seen this happen when you have either multiple people collaborating on a workflow, opening it from different computers, or just me opening it from different computers, and I'm not sure if something's cached. Joelle, didn't you see this recently? Like when you're collaborating on a workflow?
Yeah, I did actually. Sorry, I had to take a call. But yeah, it's, you know, the only thing that I was able to do is we had to actually just rebuild the workflow.
Yeah, that was my solution. Yeah. So anyway, just happy.
Yeah.
By the way. But I just have to remember that when I was triggering after tasks got complete, I was triggering this other workflow, and I need to remember that I was actually using part of the task name to determine which task that was getting completed. So I need to remember to go account for that and go look and it'll do that process step. So make process step equal to that task data ID. So we'll go run this one real quick, and then again we'll go, instead of kind of jumping into something that already exists, we'll go do it kind of from scratch on the other site. Okay, so I'm going to you know what? It actually might not trigger that second task because of me changing what the task is called in the task name. But anyway, all right. I'm going to do I'll put you in IT, Joelle, and pull out a couple things here. And let's see. Me, not very creative here. Okay. Save. All right, and then I have my little in progress thing where I have the dashboards that I created in another Power Hour. All right, so it created her task, and then and look, it got my description. See, manager approval and description. It got those from the task data list when it created that, and then when I go over to the task list and look at that column, I'm going to scroll all the way down. I can see that it's now pointing to the task data item with information about that one. So again, it gives me better ability to go slice and dice that list of tasks and have more information about it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go over to my, this is the demo. I started building everything from scratch last time we built all this out. So I'm going to go add an app and just add my task data list real quick. I'm not going to add all the tasks. I don't want to waste too much time. And change. That's what I do. I always just put an underscore in the name and then go change it later. Little pet peeve thing. All right, and then I have the task name. And I have due hours. That's a number. And I'm just going to put task description. I'm not going to bother with since email doesn't even work on my VM, so I don't really have any way to prove that out. I'm not going to put the email in there just to save time. So I'm going to make this so that it's just plain text, which is a lot easier to work with just in general. All right, so task name, due hours, description, and then what else? What do I have? What am I missing besides email body? Oh, I had department in there so that I could be able to have tasks, be associated with a department. All right. Okay. And I know I have an existing site column that's just out of the box in SharePoint, just called department, so I'll go ahead and add that too. Mine, for some reason, it always takes a minute whenever I reference a site column in here. Department. All right, so there's my task data, and then I'll go ahead and do the thing where I add the ID as a column in my view. All right, manager approval. 24 hours. This is the important task for the manager. All right, and then that's not going to have a department because that's just whoever that new hires manager happens to be. So that one's going to vary. And then you've got new user account creation, 4 hours. That was very, very strict. So create a new user account, blah, blah, blah. And then that's always going to be the information technology department. In the real world, of course, you probably want to have a drop-down box with your departments. And then I'll say HR send welcome packet, and I don't know, 6 hours. Sorry that my keyboard is so loud. Okay, I've just created 3 so far, kind of just like I did on the other one. And then I might create some more in a minute. And then I have to go over to the task list and create that lookup. Now, what I did when I created this solution was everything, all the columns I created, I remembered to go do it in the content type. So I have all these task content types that I was using in the solution. So I could go just add this to, add this column to the task list itself just directly, or I could be nice and neat and do like the way I was doing before and go put it in each of these content types. I'm going to say I'm add from a new site column, so I'm going to call it process step. And that was that lookup field, so that each task knows which task data item it's related to. I guess this existing group, what did I call it? Did I call it new hire? I don't know. Oh yeah, new hire group. Okay, and then that's going to be my task. Task data. And task name, and then again, remember I wanted to bring across the department so I could, just for reporting purposes. Okay, I think I got everything. And then so I went and added it. That added it to one of my several content types. So I think it was in this one. I'll go add it to this one also. Add from existing site columns. And if I had a parent content type that I had created for all these that I'm using in the solution, then I could just add it in one place. But the parent for these was just the generic SharePoint one called the workflow task one. So that's another factor. Okay, I think I've got one more. I've got 3 different task content types. And the reason I had created different task content types was because different tasks that people get assigned to them have different fields that they need to fill out. Like the one to create the new hire account actually has them fill out the new hire's name in that task as they complete it. All right. So now when I go to my task list, it's going to have that new column is going to exist in there. I'll go to my list settings, and I can see process step. There it is. Okay, and it shows me which content types it's associated with. All right, now let's go to the workflow. All right, so we'll close this one. Sites. Here it is. And I'll close this other one. Okay, new hire approval process, that's what I called it. I'll just show you real quick, but I want to show you, again, I want to kind of filter out all the mess here and just kind of show you these 3 different methods just down and dirty. So this is what the whole workflow looks like that we did in the other sessions. But I'm going to go in here and create a new workflow on the new hire list. And so test task. And this is something you could do in 2010 or 2013, by the way. All right, so I used create list item for all these tasks. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a list item. I'm going to do this method all 3 ways so that you can see what the differences are. So I have, there's my task list. All right, and I'm going to say my task name, manager approval, and description, please approve. And then I'm going to I would have to do that calculation before if I was going to do the due date, right? Okay, I'm going to keep this super simple, and I'm just going to do a couple of fields, but I'm still going to point to that process step in here. All right, and actually, this first method doesn't use the process step, sorry. Okay, so it's just got a name and a description, and then the second method, method 1, like that. Now you could name your stages like pretty names to help you, just get around in there and know kind of what you're doing. So there's just a whole making a comment is just a different way of doing that, just for you to visually know what's going on in there. And here's where I'm going to go create a set workflow variable. No questions, huh? All right, so this is where I have to have a variable, right? I have to have task data ID. Anybody remember what type of variable I created it as? I think it was an integer, right, Corey?
Yeah, it's an integer.
Okay.
It only works as an integer.
Yes, that was because you'll quickly find out. If you put number in there, you'll quickly find out that it does not work as a number. Okay.
Nor does it work as a lookup ID.
Oh.
In the hard way.
Yeah. So then when you have your variable, then when you create your list item, I can say, again, I'm going to do my task list. My task name is just task data, task name, where the ID of the task is equal to that task data ID. And then description is equal to task data description, where the ID is equal to, hopefully doing this over and over again. Everybody kind of get the pattern, right?
It becomes like second nature.
Okay, so I created this one with where I just typed it in here, task name and description, and I created this one with it's referencing that existing list. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, using this second method, yep, forgot something. Process step also needs to be that same variable. Oops. And then I'll use the third method, method 3. And method 3, you're not putting much information in the task. So it's easier, but you have less ability, like for reporting purposes, kind of in the task list itself. So I'll go to my task list, and I still have to put my task name in there because it's a required field. But I'm just going to say, I'll go ahead and just point to it the other way. That one's tricky because task name, I can't just not have anything in it because it needs information. I could go an extra step and make it not required, but yeah, and it needs to have a name. Okay, we're workflow. And then I'm only going to do, the only additional field I'm going to do is the process step. Oh, Corey, mute yourself. And then, all right, so the main purpose I've seen for using this third method is going to be just visually. You can have like more of like, pretty descriptions and things like that showing in the task list that don't necessarily exist in the task list. So, all right, so here, let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and publish this. And oh, I didn't do a go to at the end. Gotta love that. Go to end of workflow. All right. Okay, so I'll go over to my new hire. Make sure I'm on the right site. Okay, go to my new hire list, and I'm just going to. Do I not have any? Oh, yeah. That's weird. My onboarding demo. I could have sworn I had multiple ones in there. Whatever. Maybe that was the other one. Okay, so I'm going to go to an existing item in here and go ahead and just manually run that workflow. Test task methods. All right, as soon as I run a workflow for the first time, it's going to create that column. Should. My poor VM. Let's go see what it did. Workflows. Test task method, it completed. Okay. So I didn't put any logging in my workflow, so I've got like nothing here. So let's go see what it did. Go to my task list and see. Okay. These are the two new ones that are the three methods that I created. So the first method, I just typed the stuff in there. Remember, I just typed it, manually in the task. So that's where that came from. The second method is the one where it's looking it up to the task data list, but it's actually populating the fields in here. And I'll go ahead and show that extra column too, so we can see that process step column. Of course, this first task, number 1, didn't have a department anyway. So it, again, it's tied to the manager approval. The third method, I only put the task name and I didn't put like this description or anything in it. So here's what you would do for the third method if you were going to use that. You would you actually have to edit the task form. So I'm going to put an additional web part on the task form that just displays that additional task data information for whatever task I happen to be looking at. So I'll go edit my display form. So here again, this is the form that people end up seeing when they open up a task to look at it. And then this is where I have to go add my task data information here. So that's kind of messy. I'll rearrange that. Okay, and then go edit the way it's displayed here. I really just want to see the description, and I want to see, I can kind of mess with the style and kind of make it look nicer or whatever, but I don't need to see the ID field. I'm going to use that to connect to it, but I can kind of play with the way it looks visually on the page. So here, right now it's showing all descriptions, right? So I still got to keep editing this form. So took me out of edit page mode. There we go. Okay. So I changed kind of, I could get rid of this tabular thing too, and I can get rid of some of this other stuff out of the web part. Let me show you the connection first. So I'm going to say get filter value from, and then I'm going to say to the provider, the workflow task field from the workflow is it's supposed to be the process step, right? It's not giving me that. The process step is going to be equal to the ID of this item. It's not the ID though. That's really weird that it's not showing there. Let me see. You know what? Have you guys noticed that workflow task or just task list 13 are very strange? Have you all noticed that? That they have all these little weird proprietary things that they do. Like it shows related items on the side, and it shows like this little more thing, and all this just strange, wacky stuff. I'm getting crickets chirping. Have y'all noticed that? Joelle's nodding. Yeah. So I'm needing to see the related item that's for the process step field. So the process step field is going to be the one in the task that's going to be sending the information to the task data item down here. But that field is not showing in the form. So, I can go troubleshoot that, and I can go look and see, if maybe it has to do with the content type or something like that. I don't want to spend too much time troubleshooting that. I'll spend a couple of minutes. But do y'all understand just the general idea? Corey, you understand the difference in that idea compared to what we were doing?
Yeah.
So you're not putting the data in the task. You're just displaying like pretty little extra information.
Right. Which is easier from a workflow perspective, I think. Yeah,
so you're not having to set all those different fields. Mm-hmm. But with 2013 workflows, you actually save a lot of time, because if I spend a lot of time going in here and setting all these field values, when I create my task here, now I can just go copy just select this and copy and paste it to do my next one. So all the time that I would be saving by not filling in all those different fields in here, it's kind of negated when you have 2013 because it doesn't matter because you can just copy and paste and use. So I can just take this same thing and copy and paste it to other parts of the workflow, and it's just looking to whatever the most recent, task data ID value is, and it's just using it in here. So yeah, I'm going to look at that real quick and see if I can, first of all, what's the content type of that form I was looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and add the content type column here. Because my content types have different fields in them, right? You can see different fields in the different content types. So I'll go add content type so I can tell which one it's going to be. All right, and then that item is just task. So it's just using the task content type. So in my list settings, I'm just going to try this because it seems like the most obvious place that it would be. So process step doesn't exist in there. So I'll go ahead and add that. Hopefully this will do the trick. It's working on it. All right, there it is. So I went to see that those are the task content type, and I went ahead and added process step to those. So now let's go try and edit the form again. So I'll go ahead and go to my task list and go to, remember it was the form web parts thing, default display form. I could go edit all these separately if I wanted people to see that related information, whether they're displaying it or editing it or whatever they're doing. So I'll go look at my connection here, get filter value from, and let's see if process step, yep, there it is. So process step should be equal to the ID field. It should. We'll see. So now I can, and again, additional things I can do in this web part, and get rid of the toolbar, get rid of some of the little extraneous stuff that it's got in there, so it's not confusing. All right, now let's go open that sucker up. No, it's not showing it. Okay, so here, wait, I've got one more thing we can do. I know you're thinking, oh, what a pain. The ID is not completely inaccessible. So you would think that the name of the process step field would match up with the ID, because those lookups, they store the ID in them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my site content type. My site column, and I'm going to add the ID. And to me, this is something that we did earlier when we were building out the dashboard. Remember, we were building out the dashboard for so that each new hire, you can go just see kind of all the related information about that new hire. We did this there as well. So I'll show you where we did that. So the new hire lookup, we did the same thing. We brought over the ID so that we could connect all those web parts and have the dashboard just send the ID value to all the web parts. So this is kind of the same concept that we're doing, is we're just going to additionally pull over the ID. So we'll have that as a column value when we're trying to do a connection to it. Does that make sense? Does that ring a bell? Kevin, you're new to all this. What do you think about all that? Are you muted? I think you're muted.
Yes, I am muted. That's why you can't hear me. And that's what I was saying while I was muted, that yes, I'm muted. No, this is all stuff I've done with some other things, and actually taking it a few other steps beyond this. So it does take a kind of a mindset to get into the this what you're doing with it, but makes perfect sense.
Cool. Yeah. So any other insights as to like other kind of stuff that you come across when you're doing this?
Well, I've not actually done this exact thing, but the things I run into are some ambiguous messages from SharePoint Designer whenever I attempt to do the same sorts of things, where it basically will say, oh, this is not guaranteed to get a unique result, or
Um,
it's something went wrong.
Something went wrong. Gotta
Yeah.
love that.
So it takes a little bit of digging into when you press the wrong button, but nothing usually outrageous.
Okay. So what I'm doing right now, kind of while Kevin was talking, is so I added that ID column after I had already added process step to my task content type. So then the additional field called department was showing, but since I added the ID field later, it wasn't showing as something that I could connect to. So I've got like 5 more minutes, but let me go back up to this display form. It's important, I think, that I can demonstrate this. Oh, see, process step : ID is the one I'm looking for. It's just, I'll probably just have to like remove that and add it again or something like that, but it's just not showing in there. I know that it's just probably something where I'll just have to go mess with the content type and, remove it and add it back or something general. Having the match up with the ID of the task data. So those two numbers will be the same. All right, so that's the general idea. All right, I'm going to go ahead and cancel there. All right, so what we've gone over is 3 different methods. The first one was just assigning all the items, putting all the values in the task. The second one is doing these lookups, and the third one is really only just doing this process step thing and then having like description and other stuff like that just exist in the other list and showing it on the form. I like number 2 the best. Does anybody have any opinions on that? Anybody that's watching? I know there are 18 of you out there. So let me know if you guys have any opinions or questions about that. Sort of the next step I would need to go to, though, is I have this task completed workflow. So look at that. It's happening on this site too. God. So this is a different site than the one that was doing it earlier, my task completed workflow. Basically, you can go see this in the other videos, but each time somebody completes a task, it was saying, okay, which task is this? And according to whichever task it happens to be, it would set a value back over in the new hire list to basically set the status field to whatever the next status is to let it move on to the next thing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Okay. So, again, any votes? Is this new to anybody out there? I don't know. There's kind of a lag, actually, I think, when we're doing this as to in the audience and they, how fast they can hear what I'm saying. But that would be the next step in that kind of approval process that you're doing in your company is, first of all, definitely plan all this out ahead of time. Right, Corey?
Yes. Most definitely.
Right, what all the potential tasks could be, and take into consideration any kind of fields that you're going to need to have. Like this one, I didn't, with the web part connection, needed that ID field. I didn't think of that ahead of time. And so, therefore, when I went ahead and tried to implement it, it was something that I should have done as I was creating those content types and putting it together. So testing is huge, and having all that information, all those requirements gathered ahead of time is huge. So basically, what I'd be able to do is go into that workflow that I already created, in the previous Power Hours, and go into all the spots where I'm creating a new task, and instead of writing all the information from scratch in each one, I would just be pointing to a variable. And then when I copy and paste that action to create all the other different tasks as I'm creating my workflow, when I'm creating a new workflow, I pretty much don't have to change anything. Because remember, I was going in and tweaking some things each time I did the new task item, because I would have to go change the description and change who it's assigned to. And I wasn't changing everything, but since you're using variables, that gives you the ability to just say, hey, the task data ID is this, and that way when the task gets created, it just, all the different fields just look to that variable, and there's nothing different between all of your different task actions. All right. That was very, very high level advanced workflow stuff, but thank you guys for sticking with us. I'm not sure what we're doing next week on Power Hour. I'm not going to put you guys on the spot right this second. Corey, you're doing. No, I'm just kidding.
What?
But yeah, thanks. Come see us again next Wednesday at 11 Central, and we'll be demoing something cool and something out of the box that's not too complicated. Like, this is pretty complicated, but it still didn't require code, right? So, all right, see everybody later.